everyone. Welcome back to another episode of 10 for the Producers. I am Darian Vorlik, Production Coordinator on the Arena Commander Design and Engineering team, and with us today we have...
I am Lisa Ohanian, and I am a Production Coordinator on the ship team.
So first off, we wanted to thank the subscribers for making this content possible. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to deliver this kind of exciting and interesting content for you all. So, why don't we get started with some questions?
Okay.
What do we have for the first one?
I'll let you pick the first one.
Yep. This first question comes from MF140884. That's a very easy name to say. So his question is, nowadays it seems to be a common thing in the gaming industry is to set a release date for a game, then either release a half-finished product or postpone the release date over and over again. What are you going to do to prevent anything similar, and what can be the reason for that phenomenon?
So to answer the first part of that question, what are we doing to prevent this? Everything that we can. The reason that you'll see this sometimes is because you'll see games, sometimes usually ones with bigger publishers, that have committed to retail stores, committed to marketing dates a year and a half in advance. That means those games have to come out those days, no matter how much polish they get or maybe don't get to do. And you'll often see those games release patches or something later on to help bring things up to where they were aiming to be. On the flip side, you'll see people push their dates back when they can because they're seeing the trajectory and the features they might have added or things that didn't turn out the way they wanted. And in order to keep quality high, you have to push things back a little bit, or else you're one of those half-finished products that you guys are asking us questions about. So it's always kind of a give and take.
On top of that, if anybody's ever pre-ordered a game before, you'll see on, let's say, Amazon, you'll see a release date a year ahead of time before any kind of release date is actually published. And a lot of times those dates are actually set by that retailer in anticipation of what the game's release date's going to be. Now, the interesting thing about what we do at Cloud Imperium, because we don't have a parent company, we're not beholden to marketing deadlines or publishing deadlines. We pretty much set those internally. And those dates are set collectively by the entire company, whether it's Chris Roberts or the marketing team, the development team, the production team. We all kind of have a say on when those dates are. So with the case for Gamescom, it was very obvious that our deadline was Gamescom. We had to have it finished for Gamescom because we can't push Gamescom back.
Right.
So you'll see a lot of us scrambling to get that done. So it depends on what that deadline is, what is it for, and how badly do we need to meet it.
Yeah.
Because if it's a deadline that can be moved and we feel that the quality is going to suffer if we're going to release it right now, then clearly it's better to push that deadline back and make sure we reach those quality benchmarks.
A lot of games will also have sort of an internal range, and they have the luxury of not mentioning their game or announcing it until they've decided, okay, yeah, we can definitely make this date, which is something we don't really have the luxury of since we started engaging our backers so early.
Yeah, our game's very transparent.
It's good, but it's also challenging.
They get to see every little thing that our game
every
goes
second.
through. So, why don't we go on to the second one?
All right. Let's see. Let's do this one. I liked this question a lot. This one comes from Arkalil.
Yep.
How many individuals typically touch a ship in some way before it's shipped?
Oh, that's all you.
So I actually thought this was a really good question, and I kind of took a few seconds to work backwards and see what I could come up with, because even I didn't know. And for even a smaller ship, I think it would be a minimum of probably like 30 to 40 people. And this counts everyone who is in the initial design meetings, the initial art review meetings, on any concept artist. This includes the person who's doing the modeling and the lead who's going to be guiding them through the modeling, even if they're not doing the modeling themselves. So everyone who is going to be touching a ship or giving guidance directly on a ship. A smaller one, assuming you can keep the count down in most of the areas, like minimum of 30 and 40, and that's before QA. And that's before bugs.
Yep.
Usually when that comes along, those numbers go up a lot because you have a ton of people touching the ship to make sure everything is the way we need it to be. When bugs come in, you don't always get the original artist or designer or programmer who worked on it. Sometimes you get who is ever available and knows how to fix that kind of bug. So it can really balloon up at that stage. But if we're just talking about through the development stage, very first draft before it goes through
pre-production, and
QA.
then the production.
Yeah, the pre-production and the production, about 30 to 40 people for a smaller ship.
And that's also including marketing? And
That doesn't include marketing or any of that. That's
so
just
you're talking
yeah,
purely
that's
development.
just development. Yeah.
So yeah, once after that, it goes to a lot of hands such as marketing, making sure that our marketing plans are correct, making sure that we have the pricing structure in place. And as Lisa mentioned, also making sure that once it's post-production, that QA can actually test it. And I hadn't thought about that when you said, like, even if the original artist isn't available, just whoever's available to fix the bug.
Well, that guy can fix a texture, so let's give it to him.
So a lot of times we'll get someone like Daniel Kamensky, who's one of our artists, may end up doing
some touch-ups on a ship that Gage made.
Right, exactly.
He hasn't seen the ship before, but he knows how to fix that problem.
As long as they have the skills to do it.
Next question.
Next one. I like this one. This one's by Gravy. Any tips for setting realistic time frames, especially when dealing with something the team hasn't done before? Sounds a lot like a lot of netcode work, and server tech is pretty uncharted waters. Would you consider it to be better to work in a certain amount of flexible time to the initial schedule for when things seemingly inevitably run over? Or is it more like a plan runs off track and you start fresh from where you are now? This is pure production work right here. Our job is to create those calendars. One of the things Lisa has is a calendar of all ship development. And the interesting thing about production is at the moment you make a calendar, it's immediately out of date.
Yeah.
Because reality happens. Things change. People's schedules change. Resources become available or don't become available. So
it's more of a living document, and you change it and you update it every day. There are definitely periods, especially earlier on, we give a little bit more flex time. And then as we flesh things out, we can predict a little bit better, usually, against other ships we've done. I've definitely seen situations where we have ships, concepts coming down the line, and we know that some of them are going to have some new unique functionality. We're going to have to flesh out the gameplay that comes along with that. And we'll talk to marketing about this and say, hey, look, we can't predict this time or for this ship for this time, but probably around this period, and they'll say, okay, well, let's see how that progresses. And then as things flesh out, we'll decide which ship to plug into that date depending on how it goes. Luckily, we have a good marketing team who's willing to be reactive when some ships come in early or more often a little bit late.
On top of that, a lot of the tech is very similarly related. For example, let's say we use one of our animators, Mark McCall.
Yeah.
If he has to animate a gun shooting, and if this new ship that we're working on has a very similar gun, historically it's taking him 3 days to animate it, then we know roughly that it's going to take 3 days to animate this other weapon. So at least we have a ballpark estimate of what time frame it's going to take. Now, if it's something that's completely new and unprecedented, let's say we need to create some kind of instant repair beam or something. That's not an actual feature, I'm just hypothetically throwing it out there.
Yeah, I was thinking about someone's like, what is that?
If it's something we've never done before, we can ask, what the producers do, we ask those developers, how long do you think it would take to make this? And we get their feedback. If we went to a designer, they may say, okay, it'll take me with a day to come up with a concept, another day to write the full design brief on it. And then, maybe art may take 2 days. So we kind of get their buy-in on how long it'll take, and we just update our schedule as we get those dates. And
we always try to ask them, even if we do think there's something similar that we can compare to, because our job isn't to create any of this, it's to facilitate everything. And you never know when we're going to say, hey, this weapon's a lot like this one, so it'll probably take 3 days, right? And Mark's like, hold on, no, you didn't account for the fact that we haven't done this yet, or it's on this kind of ship, which is totally different. So we always, every single thing, we have to check and check in again.
Yep. Another interesting point is that as we go through more and more ships, we learn the processes as we go. So one process, like if we see that historically that it's taken 3 days to do a certain type of feature, we're going to become more and more efficient as we go through. So what may have taken 3 days historically, we may have it down so pat that it only may take a day and a half to 2 days. So it's kind of one of the other advantages of having producers on hand and also keeping these schedules up to date, is we can see the trend on how long it's taken before versus how long it's taking now, and we can see where those increases are, where we need to give more time versus less time.
Yeah, and that's we're seeing that on the component pipeline right now, which brings me really conveniently, we didn't plan this, I promise, into our next question. Logical chimp. Last year there was
chips
a lot
logical?
of, this one is,
Okay.
last year there was a lot of talk about the component pipeline and how it was expected to start pumping in the new year. Since then, all has gone quiet on this front. Can you give us an update on the component pipeline and when we can start seeing something other than weapons and shields in the store? So I can't tell you when you're going to see stuff in the store because that's marketing, that's Ben's realm. But we've been making a lot of progress on components lately. If you saw Ship Shape a few weeks ago, we had Elwin on and he talked about plans for components and he has been working on that nonstop ever since. We have our pipeline fleshed out in excruciating detail for art and design, which is fantastic. I took a break from working on our till the end of the year component schedule to come down here and do this. We've been having a lot of meetings about it. We have at least a first pass concept of every component type in at least one size, so we have an idea of what the norms are going to be in the visual cues, because obviously the smallest and the largest size shield generator are going to look very different, but we're hoping to have visual cues in there so that you can look at either one and say, oh, that's a shield generator right away. So we have the basic concept art fleshed out to give those cues, and we have Gage working on a lot of the white boxes right now, and Elwin's supporting him.
And on the tech design side, that's what Matt Sherman. Yeah, Matt
Yes,
Sherman.
Matt
He's
Sherman.
our item component guru.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, he's fantastic, and he's starting the design on a bunch of that stuff too. So and again, like we were talking about before, he was saying, oh, for the first one, give me like X amount of days, and for the next one, just give me half of that, because we know that after that's all been fleshed out, it'll be a little bit easier to predict from that point on. So I know we've been kind of quiet, but we are making progress. It's just not as shiny to talk about as ships all the time.
and it's like I said, or like Lisa said, it's being worked on. We haven't forgotten about it.
No, not at all. It's like my day to day.
This question is by Mookie. I think I had a cat named that once. It's great that new releases of Arena Commander are always fixing bugs and introducing new stuff. My question is, when are we going to start seeing some of these stuff that's still broken from way back when? Examples, would collision issues with ships or items in our hangars, or the Great Cat not moving in the AeroView hangar, Wingman's voiceover is gone. I realize these are not game-stopping or uber important compared to new super cool features, but I would think that existing problems will be worked at least at the same time as new ones. This is actually something that came up in a production meeting that we had with our senior producer, Eric Davis. Lisa was there, also our UK compatriot, Ricky Jutley.
With the hair.
With the both of our senior producers have epic hair.
Epic hair.
One of the things that we have in our task management program, Jira, is a backlog of issues that we'd like to eventually get to. And what this backlog does is serves as a wish list of issues that may have not have been touched in a long time.
And they're all rated by priority, from blocker to critical and all the way down to trivial.
And what we have to do as producers is gauge on how important those fixes are. For example, if we're working on making the Retaliator flyable for Gamescom, a little piece of clipping texture in the hangar is not going to be as important as the tech to make the ship flyable. Now, granted, these are two very different disciplines. As producers, we have to dictate what these
who has bandwidth
exactly
for what.
who's going to be working on what, and if we find that we need resources dedicated on some important aspect of Arena Commander, then those purely aesthetic bugs are going to take the back seat until we get this finished. Now, going back to that production stand-up meeting we had recently, is that we're starting to really look at that catalog of back issues that we have. And now that we have some breathing room in preparation for 2.0, we really want to start addressing some of those, whether it's aesthetic or mechanical or technical issues, to make sure that when 2.0 comes out, that these are much reduced and not as problematic as they've been in the past.
Here's a really good one, actually. So how much of the work you split up between the different studios can really be done separate, and how much of it requires multiple studios to work together on a single aspect of the game? How do you manage to sync the work done by the different studios that are probably also in different time zones? This is a really good question, and actually one of our biggest challenges. So when we're deciding what work needs to be done for something, take Gamescom for example, we try to divvy up work in a way that makes sense. Like, we're not going to have an artist and a designer for the same ship working in tandem while one's in the UK and one's here, because it just they can't communicate. They can't have that back and forth.
Yeah, logistically, it's impossible.
Right, exactly. They don't necessarily know the status of everything, and it takes 8 hours to find out the answer to a basic question that might be blocking you. So we really try to be smart about when we're breaking up the work. There were a lot of ships. Well, for example, Gamescom, UK did a lot of the large world tech and a lot of the infrastructure for what you saw at the demo. And they had been working on some of the art for a lot of the ships. And they have the bandwidth, of course, and the talent and everything to have done a great job with the tech setup and everything for the ships. But since we knew they needed to work on it, they just handed all of the ships off at a certain part when the art was done for us to do tech setup, because that's a very clean breaking point. There are parts in the ship pipeline where everything is intertwined and things are just coming in everywhere. But that actually, when they're handed things off, was a very clean breaking point to give to us, and we had all of the context just from looking at the files to finish everything up. And it made sense for us to take on those ships because we would have everyone locally working on these essentially mini features, and they could all focus on what they were going to need to interact with the most between each other.
On the flip side of that, there's a lot of times where there is a lot of international collaboration. Stephen Humphreys from the UK office is one of our engineers. And what would happen, he would work on part of this Ghost system, and every day the design and engineering team would have a series of handoff emails where we would send an email at the end of our day to the UK office on what's been progress, or how much progress has been done, what's been completed, what bugs have been fixed. And so then the UK would use that as a point of departure as far as what they need to continue off of or what they started. And at the end of their day, they send us another handoff email, and that kind of lets us know what they did. So with Ghost, whatever Stephen Humphreys had worked on, whatever he was finished at the end of that email would reach us, and therefore, Kirk, Dan, Mark Avent would then pick up from there. So they would get emails for what stuff on Ghost had been completed, and they would be able to run with the ball until the end of our day. So there is a lot of international collaboration. It just depends entirely on what that feature is. Some of it doesn't require collaboration at all.
And what makes sense at the time, too. We also, just to piggyback on that was a really good point, we have our CG supervisor, Forrest, who's been really championing us getting more detail into our bug tickets in our database. And that way, you can not only go to someone and look them up and say, oh, this is what they're working on, but you can go in there and you can see what sub parts of it are finished and what aren't, how many hours a task is going to be, how many they've logged so far. And this is completely invaluable between studios when you want to see how things are progressing and when you can task your developers appropriately. Yeah,
ideally through Jira, whenever a developer leaves a comment on what work they did, if another developer opened up that ticket or that task,
they just see everything.
Read the comments. They should be able to exactly pick off where the last one left off.
Yeah.
This next question comes from Dastardly. Within the design of the simulator, will there be anything other than support for network devices like tablets and the like? Multiple monitors with touchscreens, etc. I have 4 monitors, and 2 of the monitors are touchscreens, and would love the immersion of interfacing with cockpit controls. I like this question
because that's an awesome idea.
It is. While tablets are something that are in the works, we're not far enough along to be able to give a solid answer on that just yet. So whether we'd like peripheral devices to have some kind of functionality in games, such as if we wanted to span 4 monitors with each individual monitor having a specific command, like one's for a side cockpit view, the other one's for an aft cockpit view. It entirely depends on what Chris wants the vision of the game to be for, or what he wants in the vision of this game. So while this is more of a design-related question, it's one that we see quite a bit on, will we support this, will we support that? And the question is, or the answer to that is pretty much, we'd like to, but we have to see exactly how the game evolves over time. So that's not a yes or no question, it's just, we're gonna have to wait and see.
And it also has to do with, whenever there's a feature that we want, we always prioritize the more important ones. Like, again, to use Gamescom, for example, do you want to avoid this little, clipping the corner of your shoe over here, or do you want to make sure the ship explodes? We need to focus on the things that are a priority, and once we're far enough along on those, we can present schedules and budgets to Chris, and he can make a more informed decision.
Like, if we have, someone has 2 monitors, we want to make sure, that the monitor actually shows the cockpit. And if someone sits down at another computer and they should be able to see the engineering screen or the weapons screen. So we want to make sure that all those features are in there first before we start adding on more and more complex features. So functionality first, cool aesthetics and luxury items maybe later.
I have a good next question. This one comes from Aragorn BH. Since Star Citizen is a first of its kind crowd-funded project that is breaking new ground in computer game development, and Chris Roberts has asked you to build not just a game, but a universe, do some members of your team get overenthusiastic? How do you keep developers from implementing so much detail on features that they risk derailing the production schedule? And have you avoided hiring less experienced people because you don't have time to train them how to avoid issues like those described above? I want to address the second part of that
That's what
first.
producers are for.
I know, that's what we're for. If we have to avoid hiring good people, that means we're not doing our job.
Yep.
But no, we have definitely not avoided hiring less experienced people. Like, I can't emphasize that enough. We actually have a huge, well, not huge, but we have a very high number for a AAA studio of people who are a little on the less experienced side, but have the talent and the know-how, and they just maybe don't have that credit yet, and it's kind of their first big break, which is really exciting. And it also kind of brings, even though you have to rein in on certain things, it also brings a really unique perspective. Whereas someone who's been in the industry tackling a certain problem for 10 years now, you might get someone else who comes in and maybe they don't have all of the experience to bring to the table, but they have a fresh perspective or spin on how to tackle this problem or how to solve this thing in front of you. We have, like I said, I think a slightly higher number than average of less experienced people, but the talent is there, and that's kind of what we look for first, I think. And we do have a lot of experienced people mixed in. I actually think it's a really exciting mixture of people that we have here.
So, and that's largely what, again, to restate, that's what producers are for, is to keep everybody on track. Mm-hmm. But to kind of break down how our organizational hierarchy is, at least within the development side, that we have let's say I'm going to use the design team as an example. We have our design lead, Dan Tracy, who, or at least within the LA office, what he does is he helps kind of steer what features we're going to be working on and how to break down each of individual tasks to make it a lot more manageable. So, for example, he may task Calix Renault with writing a design brief on something, and he may then give it to Kirk Tomei to make that particular, let's say using a ship, he may make it flyable. Matt Sherman may be working on the components of that ship. So everybody does have their responsibilities on what they're going to be doing, but those tasks are going to be broken down by the lead, and what production does is just make sure people are staying on those tasks.
Sorry, just to chime in, the funny thing I think is we probably have that problem. We probably see that coming from Chris Roberts the most because he has so many ideas in his head and such a vision for this world that we'll see him bringing up these awesome ideas and we'll say, oh, that's so great. This is what it's going to mean, and then we get to make an educated decision about how soon and how we want to implement something.
But on top of that, I mean, when you have a room full of very creative people, they want to work on everything at once. So you may have one designer who's working on, one specific feature. Once he's done with that design brief, he may, completely just filled with creativity at that point and just like, I want to start working on this, and then I'm going to work on this, which starts to deviate away from the main goal of whatever fixed version or patch we're trying to work towards. Mm-hmm. So it's up to the design lead and the producers to kind of like, no, you still need to work towards this direction. Once we're done with that, and maybe we can actually squeeze that little bit of creativity in. So they are creative people, but it's our job to keep them on track.
Yeah, it's an art and a science working with leads to make sure that people get an appropriate amount of time. Not too little and not too much.
Yep, because if you don't let them spend some time on it, they get a little burnt out. So you do want to make sure that they're getting, I don't say rewarded, it's not like a doggy treat or something, but we do want to make sure that they have the ability to exercise that creativity while still maintaining a goal and perspective on where we're trying to get to in the game.
All right, we've got another question. This one is from Kinchato. He asks, you guys have focused a lot on the ship pipeline in the past. I was wondering if non-artistic elements of the PU undergo such rigor. For instance, storylines and mission generation, if there's a pipeline of writers to designers to programmers for such assets, or if it's more ad hoc. So first of all, the ship pipeline is not just art. The majority of it is art because that is what tends to take the most time, but that includes everything from I have an idea for a ship to in your game working in Arena Commander and eventually the full Star Citizen game. So the tricky thing with ships is ships are going to permeate the entire game. So we have to have the PU director weigh in. We have to have like everyone who touches every module weigh in to make sure that the way we're doing ships now is going to work with everything that they have in mind for their chunk of the game. For that reason, I think that it's a little more, it requires a lot more checks and balances for ships. However, everything has its own pipeline.
Yes.
A pipeline is it's a fancy way to say process how things gets done.
Or assembly line.
yeah. So there's a pipeline for everything, whether or not it's been formalized. And it consists of, people passing off different kinds of work and stopping and making sure the appropriate people are reviewing along the way.
And a good example of that would be we have a character pipeline, we have an animation pipeline.
Yeah.
What we'd like to do between each phase, for example, let's use a ship one for example, before or after we're done with the white box, before it goes to gray box or any kind of text setup, there is a series of checklists that we have to go through. Did we do this? Did we complete this? Did this person look at this? Is the lead or supervisor getting ready to sign off on it? Does production sign off on it? So to mention Lisa's checks and balances, there are a series of protocols in place to make sure certain aspects are touched upon. Same thing with the character pipeline, same thing with the Arena Commander pipeline, anything design or engineering related. If it's code related, yeah, we have code leads review the code or peer review the code before it gets checked into the game. So there are processes in place for all of these, and all a pipeline is like we said, it's just a process from start to finish. What does it look like? What steps are we going through? And is it going to be the same thing every single time we design that same feature? So every ship will go through that ship pipeline. Every character will go through that character pipeline.
And the more areas something touches, or the more modules it touches, the bigger it gets. There's a lot of talk about the ship pipeline. Again, so many people review it and it touches so many things. And that's why we talk about it so much, because there's a little more to talk about than certain other pipelines, but everything has a pipeline.
This last question comes from Sultan. Now that one of the major producers has left, that led us thinking that he didn't have confidence in the project. Can you please let us know if you will replace him with someone better that will have the passion for this project like we all have? So I wanted to clarify that every single one of us has passion for the project, and every single one of us wouldn't be here if we didn't have that and share that same passion as Chris does.
And we did, just because people have left, it's not like if you're here you have passion, and if you are not, then you don't. We've had people leave for personal reasons. We've had people leave to pursue dream jobs they've had since they were children.
Yeah.
You can have passion and confidence in more than one project at the same time, and just because you can only have one job doesn't mean that.
Well, on top of that, mobility between companies is a very normal thing,
yes.
especially during the lifespan of a game cycle. At any video game company, you're going to see people come and go. It's a very mobile industry in that you see a lot of hiring and you see a lot of leaving. So one person leaving doesn't necessarily mean a nail in the coffin for a project, or that the project is now diminished. So we've hired actually quite a few people within the last year, and all of these people are equally as passionate as the others. So you're not going to see a diminishment in the quality of the game. You're not going to see less passion, because like I said, every one of us is absolutely passionate for it. So
the producers who have left recently, just to add, have all been here at least a year or many years since the beginning of the project. Frankly, I'd be worried if you saw a bunch of producers come on and stay 3 months and then leave.
Yes.
Because that might be a sign of
I think it's a sign of their lack of commitment.
Yeah, lack of commitment, but that's not what you're seeing here at all.
No, everybody here is diehard and passionate for the project. We're here for the long haul. Some people, like Lisa said, some people have to leave for personal reasons. Some people have to leave for professional reasons. Some people may be offered their dream job out of state or out of country. It doesn't mean that they were disappointed in the project. It doesn't mean that they had less confidence in the project. They have their own reasons. So ultimately, we support people if they want to pursue things outside of the company. We're sad to see them go, and we're thankful for the contribution that they made. And
still have great relationships with all of them.
Absolutely. I still talk with a lot of those old friends who used to be here. So if you know someone who does have the skills and passion to help bring this project to reality and closer towards the vision that Chris wants, please do check out the website. see what opportunities are available. I mean, many of our own artist employees are people who came from, who were fans before and backers, such as, you know, artist Elwin, who helped contribute to the Next Big Starship.
Gage and Dan.
Yep. So, and we hired them because of skills that they demonstrated to us. So, they have the passion, they have the skills. Please apply. We'd love to see you on board. It's a great team and a great project to be a part of.
Except for this guy.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to sit next to her.
You don't sit next to me anymore.
Thank God. So once again, thank you for joining us on this next episode of 10 for the Producers. I am Darian Borlick.
I'm still Lisa Ohanian.
We'd like to thank the subscribers for making this exciting content possible. Without you guys, again, this wouldn't be possible, so it is very much appreciated. And thank the backers for making Star Citizen a reality. So as you saw with Gamescom, this is an awesome project to be a part of, and we're absolutely proud to be a part of it.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Hey guys, thanks for watching 10 for the Chairman. If you guys would like to see more episodes, go here. If you guys would like to subscribe to our YouTube channel and always keep up to date with all our video content, go here. And if you guys would like to watch episodes of Around the Verse, go here please. And I will see you in the verse.